Arm drag is killing your velocity, and here's why. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Max Wardell, overheadathletics.com. I'm joined by Tony today. We're going to talk about arm drag a little bit. Arm drag is something we see in our throwers quite commonly, and we hear it talked about more and more nowadays. Basically, it's that arm dragging behind the body. Think about the arm really pulling from behind the body, way too far behind. Maybe it's high, maybe it's low, but in reality, it's behind the chest and behind the body. That's a big issue. So if we're looking at Tony from the side, let's get in that lunge stance. Tony, kind of like you're finishing a pitch. Get out there a little bit for me. Bring that back foot back. So he's kind of in this good position. When that arm starts to get too far back this way, we'll consider that arm drag as he's coming through with his body. So as he's coming through, the chest goes open, the arm stays behind, pulls through at the last second. We'll call that arm drag. Basically what's happening there is instead of using some of these big musculature like this big lat muscle, even some of the pec, but also the muscle underneath the shoulder blade to accelerate the ball forward, you're relying on the rotation purely of the trunk and then the stability of the anterior shoulder, that anterior capsule. Basically it's a big ligament in the front of the shoulder and you're pulling on it a lot. How do we know this? When I have somebody that's got shoulder pain, I put them right in this position and I pull them back and towards me. If that hurts, we call that anterior apprehension, and we do it on the table as well. Tony doesn't like it, does he? He's got a little bit of a shoulder thing going on, so me doing this to him doesn't feel so good on his arm. You'll see this functionally, usually with an arm angle that's elongated lever arm, especially when it happens early in the throw coming out and around. And we will typically see that arm drag. So why does this happen? Go ahead, you can come out of this, Tony. Why does that happen? Think of a figure skater. What position does a figure skater put her arms in when she wants to spin fast? In close, every time. They never put their arms way out here when they want to spin fast. They go like this when they want to slow down. So if you're trying to accelerate the ball from this elongated arm position, you can have whatever debate you want to have about the stability of the shoulder and the elbow in different positions. Regardless of all that, you can simply not accelerate or rotate as fast with your arm out here. That elongated lever arm position increases what we call the moment of inertia. The moment of inertia, in layman's term, would be drag, but it's not technically drag. It's a resistance to motion. It increases the resistance to rotational motion in the throw, especially of the chest and of the trunk. When you do that, that's going to inevitably result in you rotating a bit slower. So we see this in the throw all the time. Here's a thrower that we've seen in the past. We worked on this quite a bit. This was early on in his progression. He's throwing quite well now, bringing the ball into a better place. But we'll also see this even in our more advanced throwers where that arm drags behind and they're losing out on speed. Now, from a shoulder stability position, that arm being behind the body, not so great. Most of our pro athletes, and I just read a piece of research this week at the time of filming this video, late July. A piece of research published last week came out, basically said the average professional pitcher throws mid-90s. Their arm is at 0 degrees of horizontal add and abduction. That means their arm is directly out to the side when it reaches maximal external rotation and slightly in front of that at ball release. Some professional pitchers are a little bit in front of that. What we've seen through some of the research we've looked at and in analyzing throwers is 0 to 15 degrees in front of the body at release and maximal external rotation. If you want to come into that position again, Tony. Where that arm lays back, they're about here. Slightly in front of the body, not way behind the body. You don't need a big pec stretch. That's a big myth. The big pec stretch doesn't matter because when we look at the EMG electromyography studies of throwing athletes, especially elite level throwing athletes, they don't use a huge pec contraction. What do they use? This big lat. Now, what happens to the lat when you come way back here? You lose some of your lat contraction way back here because the lat does what? This. So when the arm's slightly out in front, you get to utilize more of that lat to help internally rotate and accelerate the arm. Just a discussion there on why arm drag is killing your gains or killing your velocity. And a lot of times it's because you're too extended out this way, creates too much drag and inertia in the throw. The arm falls behind the body and results in poor speed. So a lot of drills I see done with the ball way out here, outside 90 or even around 90, probably aren't favorable for your throwing velocity. And sometimes arm drag looks different depending on the plane you're looking at. So there's a lot of different perturbations of arm drag, but what we commonly see is just arm too far behind the body, tensile loads that front of that shoulder. Not a great thing. So we'll work on correcting that, and we'll talk about that in future videos so you guys can see what you need to do to work on your arm position, accelerate the ball at a greater speed, but ultimately protect your elbow and your shoulder so they're not loaded in the exact same way they were. It led to your decreased speed and or injury. If you guys are new to the channel, you have to subscribe because you're gonna miss out on a lot of great content if you don't. So we'll see you guys in the next video.